Just a few things. Laura, in the next class, be sure you're lit. I can barely see you. It's so dark around you. So be sure you have lights on you so that I can see you. And Sarah, Sarah Liv, it's also, you're very, very dark. So try and sit in a place where you can be lit, at least from the front, so that I can see your face. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart?
Yes, Larry.
I have this need to let go of the past and knock over the white picket fence, but which I feel like it's discussed so much, and it's a question of going deeper, just going deeper within yourself to do that. But sometimes the resistance, and it gets
not only sometimes, Larry, always the resistance. But the resistance is not unhealthy. The resistance is telling you you're making progress, and there's a part of you that really doesn't want to let go. So the resistance is just reminding you to have patience, to continue the inner work, to work on developing the capacity to absorb that resistance. So it's not a negative thing. It's really something that is just a reminder that you are really making progress. And one of the hardest things in the world to do is to change. I mean, if you want to go to the pharmacy and get a tube of toothpaste or wherever you get it, you can stand 20 minutes before you buy a different tube of toothpaste that you've been using for a long time. Change is a really difficult thing. But when you feel that resistance inside, it means you really are changing. And the resistance is just reminding you that you've got to go a little deeper. You've got to have patience. You can't expect this thing to happen in a day and a half. It takes time. And all of these elements are essential, not only in spiritual growth, but in simply dealing with humanity, to have that kind of patience. Because, people, they fight like wolves, against change. And it's a very sedentary, part of the life we live where people refuse to change inside themselves. So the resistance is not unhealthy. It's just telling you that you are making progress towards changing, and there's a part of you that is fighting it. And then you have that kind of internal war of dragons. And, and it's like the story of the tortoise and the hare. At first it seems like this thing is so impossible. And then gradually, through slowly doing your inner work, having patience with yourself, you overcome it. So don't feel like the resistance is negative. It's not. It's just a reminder that you are moving forward in terms of changing in yourself. And then you have to just take your inner life to a place where you can absorb that resistance and transform it into Shakti, into energy, into love, into gratitude, and allow yourself to become a much bigger person inside. It's a battle, it's a struggle, I mean, look, getting to God is, the single most difficult thing anyone can try on the earth. You are up against God knows what. Only God knows what we're up against. But we have the tools, we have everything inside us that can do it. And we have to just learn one thing that is difficult for people to learn, to have patience. And to learn how to master the craft of inner work, because that's really what will break down the resistance. And I understand it. You think I don't have resistance? I've been doing this a long time. And there's resistance. But I don't see resistance as a negative energy. And I'm not going to let it take over my life. I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm not going to let it, force me to do things that will damage myself. Say, okay, that's the resistance. I need to get stronger inside. I need to work on myself. I need to continue to master the craft of inner work, to open deeper so that I get bigger than the resistance. Then the resistance dissolves. And I can promise you there'll be another resistance after that. Because as you grow, the task, the internal battles get bigger, when I was a young man, my entire battle was paying a $38 a month rent and killing all the cockroaches in the kitchen. As I got older and I was growing in my life, teaching all over the world, running businesses. And it created a resistance on a level I never dreamed of. But all of that made me stronger. Rather than paying $38 a month and fighting cockroaches in a tenement apartment in the slums of New York. So resistance is not negative. It gets people down and it makes them depressed only because they don't have the tools to deal with it. We have the tools to deal with it. So you shouldn't see it as something negative. You see it as something that's part of your growth.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart?
Yes, Paul.
I would, I want to share something. It's sometimes I'm wondered about it. Sometimes I have these moments of, I told you already, I have these moments of timelessness, and when I'm there, it seems to be so easy to get there. It seems to be so easy actually to do it, but then again most of the time it's such a big struggle, and even I forget how to get there or so it's so strange that on one hand it seems so easy, and the other hand it's like it seems almost impossible to do.
Well, Paul, it's easy when you just let go of everything in your head. As soon as the mind gets involved, as soon as your emotions get involved, it gets really difficult. It interferes with that timeless sense of inner peace, of quiet, because we're so used to reverting to the mind that the mind creates all these obstructions that you mentioned. But, once you get to that state of resistance, that timelessness, the hard part is sustaining it. The hard part is really allowing it to exist inside you for more than a moment or two. And that's really part of the inner work. Keeping your attention below the navel, keeping your heart open, feeling gratitude, doing the inner work will allow that timeless sensation to sustain itself. Getting stronger than your mind so that your mind doesn't take over, so that you are a receptacle for spiritual energy instead of a servant of this area in the mind, which is all about conflict and, polarity and duality and analyzation and rationalization and all this stuff that goes on in the mind. So what you described is, it's part of the growth. But then a deeper part of the growth is being able to stay balanced and centered inside, keeping the mind quiet, keeping the heart open, so that you can sustain that deep sense of inner peace, which we're all trying to get to, And then we not only sustain it, but we live with it every day. No matter what goes on in the world, we can sustain a quiet in ourselves, a timelessness in ourselves, connection with spirit. We have the craft. We have built the system that enables us to do this. So what you described, Paul, is really very good, because you've got to get a taste of it and you've got to be able to experience this in order to somehow come to the realization that, hey, this is something extraordinary to live with every day. I need to do the work that enables this to be possible. I mean, I've told you many times how I got involved in all this. And it happened when, my father died. I was 16 years old. And when I walked into his hospital room, like maybe 20 minutes, 15 before he left the world, he was lying in bed in a state of inner peace that I had never seen before. The whole room was full of light. And he was lying there, and I could look into his eyes and see a million miles. And I said to him, "Do you know me?" Because for an entire week, he was like in a coma. He had 106 fever. It was, and he took my hand and he said, "Yes." And when I walked out of the room, I met his nurse. And I asked her, "What is going on there? I've never seen my father." And she said to me something that really changed my life. She said to me, to her experience, just before people leave the world, they go into that state of serenity and inner peace. And my first thought was, why did my father have to wait 49 years to experience this, 15 minutes before he left the world? So what you described, Paul, is really working to experience this and take this through life. And the day that comes that we have to leave the world, we are in a state of grace. We are in a state of inner peace because we have lived in a state of inner peace. And why should a person have to wait to die to experience this? Why can't people live with this every day of their lives? And it's possible. We have the tools, we have chakras, we have inner work that we can do to make this state of grace possible for ourselves, not just as a fleeting state of grace, but something that's permanent inside us. I mean, that experience that I just described, it literally changed my life at the age of 16. And from that moment on, I was looking for somebody who could teach me how I can attain that state of inner peace without having to, wait till the day that I'm going to leave the world. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Thank you.
And the moment that we master the mind and we can keep our heart open, that state of grace begins to manifest itself. And that's all meditation is about, learning how to do this. Does anyone else have a... Huh?
You once told me, Stuart, you once told me it took you 4 years to get free of your mind. Not, or, but I guess you did a lot of meditation.
Yes. Yes, it took me 4 years to learn how to do that. And I've been living, God knows how many decades with a relatively free mind. And it certainly was worth the investment. 4 years is nothing if you can live 30, 40 years with a mind that is relatively quiet. It takes time. It's like I told Larry, you have to have patience to, get bigger than the resistances that are inside yourself. It takes time. I mean, I've said it before. My teacher said it better than anybody. It takes 9 months to have a baby. It takes 1 second to die. If you have a baby in 3 months, you're not going to have a baby. So it takes time to mature. It takes time for spiritual work to germinate inside us. And then it takes time and patience for that, energy to really grow and manifest in terms of timelessness, inner peace, quiet, love. I mean, I know about that, because I've written a lot of books, and one of my books I wrote, a thing called The Mystical Fairy Boat. I don't know if any of you have read it, but I started writing that book in 1967. I finished it in 2013. Now, if I knew what was there all the time. It took all of that time, not working on it every day, but for that book to germinate and then for the craft to develop it. But it took all of that time for it. And the book is like 100 pages. The story is like 100 pages, but it took all of that time to get it into a completed state. And I have other books, 10 years, 15 years, 12 years. So one has to have patience. Patience is a sign of real maturity. Impatience is a sign of immaturity. All right, I got to have it in 2 days, 5 days. I once wrote a play. Oh, you read the play, Paul. It took me 3 weeks to get that play on paper. And then it took about 3 or 4 years to craft it, to get it at least in a relatively finished state. And it's still not in a finished state.
Yes, I'm working 10 years at the same play at the moment as well. So I know.
Oh, so you understand what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But once it's finished, you have something that really is kind of amazing that you've created. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, so as I announced earlier, Thursday, I'm not going to be able to have a class. I'm going to be traveling, so it'll be impossible to do. So the next class will be next Sunday. And please, Sarah Liv and, Laura, lighten yourself up. I really would like to see you while I'm teaching this class. So in the next class, be sure that you have light on you so that the energy will be a lot stronger too. Are there any more questions? All right. Well, again, God bless you all. Thank you. And in all humility, I am just deeply grateful I can do this and share my life and what I've learned with all of you. And the importance of your being here is that this is a marriage on a very high level that enables the energy of God to transmit itself. And it requires, people to be here to do the work, to open up this kind of depth of energy that takes place in the class. So God bless you all and thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all next Sunday. Have a wonderful weekend and, a wonderful week. Bless you. Thank you.
Bless you and have a nice trip back.
I'm going back to America.
Have a nice trip.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Good night or goodbye. Good night.
Bye.